Hey everybody, Aaron with Beer Maker here. I'm going to run through this recipe builder template today and explain a little bit about what these fields are and how to make best use of this template. So let's say you found a cool recipe on the internet and you wanted to make it on your beer maker. The first thing you would do is get that recipe onto this sheet. And this sheet's going to do a couple things. It's going to show you what to expect out of the beer that comes out of your beer maker. It'll calculate out what your gravities are, both in specific gravity as well as in degrees Plato. It'll calculate out your alcohol by volume, IBUs, and the color of the beer. And it will show you here, this is important, how much water to add to your beer maker based on the ingredients that you're looking to brew. So starting off, we can just name a beer. Let's say I found this really cool recipe I want to make. Say an Avery IPA. This is one of my favorite beers, local in Boulder, Colorado. And you can find a lot of these recipes on the internet, and oftentimes breweries will publish a home brewing recipe. So you can see this recipe is scaled for 5-gallon batch production. It shows you what grist makeup is, as well as hops and the type of yeast to use, and what you should expect with your gravities. So we'll come back to that in a minute. So first off, we want to look at efficiency on our sheet. So 80% efficiency is the best place to start. Beer Maker produces 80% efficient mashes with grist amounts up to about 1,500 grams. As you get to 1,500 grams and above that, it really starts falling down to maybe 75% or 70% on some of the much bigger ones, like up to 1,800 grams. So just be aware of that and enter in the value based on your essentially how much grain you're going to be putting into this thing. These values you really shouldn't mess with. We like to keep the target finish volume. So this is what volume you should expect to have in your brew tub at yeast pitch. And then hop absorption is how much liquid the hops will absorb. And about 5 milliliters per gram is a pretty good number to start with. So let's look at our grain input. So right here we have a Breeze 2 row, 1,000 grams of that, which now calculates out to about 2.2 pounds. And right now, because the only thing in there, it's 100% of our grist. This other stuff is less important for you to pay attention to as you're building your recipe, but still important to understand, like, yeah, this DP, this is diastatic power, so how many, what your enzyme capabilities are in this grain. So anything above 40 is going to ferment, is going to convert pretty well into sugar. Likewise, Lovabond, it will show you how light this particular malt is. So 1.8 it's a pretty low Lovabond, and it yields a 2.7 SRM. So that's a very, very light beer. Stouts are usually in the high 30s to 40s. So if you bracket everything from about 1 to 2 in that lager range, all the way up to 40 plus for stouts. So that's a good gauge on SRM. And I'm sure everybody knows IBU and ABV. So next up, let's say we want to add another malt in here that you don't see on your dropdown. For example, let's say I have a Gambrinus Munich, but I only see Gambrinus Honey here. So what we can do is go to the Grain Lookup tab, and we find where our Gambrinus Honey is, and we're going to add a new row here. And we're going to do, let's call this a Gambrinus Munich. And it's really important to populate the rest of these rows. So if you know all of your values, you can do that. If not, find a malt that's similar, as similar as you can. So this Gambrinus Munich, I know it's relatively similar to let's say the Weimar Munich 2. So I'm just going to copy the values from Weimar Munich 2, and I'm going to put them up here. I know the diastatic power is going to be a little bit lower on this Gambrinus because the Lovabond is higher, and I know on my spec sheet the Lovabond is actually 30, so I'm going to change it from 9 to 30. And let's say our diastatic power, we're going to drop that down to 50. So now we go back over to our recipe and we click on our drop-down menu and down to G, and here we go. Now we have Gambrinus Munich, and it populates all of the fields properly. So let's say we're going to put 100 grams of Gambrinus Munich in, and that 30 Lovibond really pops up our SRM. We go from 1.8 to 6.5, so it's doing the job. Next, we have hops. So this hop drop-down has a lot of hops in it. And likewise, if you don't see a hop that you'd like to use, so you can, let's say we have Kent Goldings here, but if I had something else that I wanted to look at, I could go into my hop lookup and same procedure. We just enter a new column, or excuse me, a new row, and then we type in the new hop here. And we type in the alpha acid of that hop. So let's say it's a 7% alpha acid. And back over here. So, and now that new hop is going to show up on our drop-down list. So we will enter in the amount of this hop that we're going to add. Let's say we're going to do 12 grams of this. And the minute is important. Recipes that you have in your arsenal or that you found, these are for boiling minute additions. This is the exact same thing if you're using steam hops. Just, choose the steam hop with the time that you need. So let's see, we've got a 12 grams of Kent Goldings at 60 minutes, and that is yielding out 32 IBUs. So if this recipe called for Kent Goldings at 60, all you do is find a Goldings 60-minute steam hop, and it will yield out the same IBU for you. If you notice on your pack of hops that the alpha acid is something different than is represented here in this acid column of 7%, let's say it's actually 8.5%, then you can type the new value in here and it will temporarily override the preset amount of alpha acids and recalculate out your IBUs to the proper level. And next is our yeast. And we have a lot of yeast in here, and but again, not all of it. So if you found a strain that is not present in here, again, go over to Yeast Lookup and just add the strain to this column. Okay, so next we have a external recipe unit converter. This will be really helpful for taking recipes that you found on the internet and putting them into your beer maker template. So let's start with this recipe that we found over here, this Avery IPA. So we are at 94% of the grist is 2-row, 4% is Munich 10, and 2% is Caramel 120. So let's get our Munich 10 in here. There we go. So Grease Munich 10, and now we're going to do a Caramel 120. There we go. And now this is where it gets a little tricky. Because they only represent these as percentages, we have to get to this 1.058 number while maintaining these percentages. So let's try. So we're at 4% Munich and 2% Caramel 20. So let's get our Munich to 4%. Right now it's at 9, and our Caramel 20, let's see if we have 50 of that, we're at 4. And our OG is pretty close. Maybe we need to push our OG up a little bit to 1100 on our 2-row. And we can, so let's try 1150. And then we can drop this down to 4. So we need to put that about 50 and this one about 25. So it looks like we got our percentages nice. And our OG is exactly what we would expect. Our final gravity is a little too high because we're using this US-05 yeast. And if we come back over here, they show that their yeast is a London ale. So we can find the London ale yeast, which is right here, and it didn't drop our final gravity too much, but that's okay. We know we're going to get close. If we're using a dry strain and we don't want to use the liquid of London, I like using SO4. It's a really great dry strain that we use for a lot of our beers here. It's very clean, has a touch of ester in it, and it's really nice and slightly fruity and cleans up really well. All right, so let's get our hops put in here. On this side, we've got 0.24 ounces of Columbus 60 and 0.27 ounces of Columbus 30, and that's all of our boil additions. Oh, excuse me, no, these are all boil additions. Okay, so let's get our 0.24 of Columbus at 60. And this is a 5-gallon batch as they've represented it. So I'm going to say, we're going to say 5 gallons here, no pounds, but we're going to say 0.24 ounces. So that is 2 grams. So let me select Columbus. And we're going to say 2 grams of Columbus 60. And next we're going to do 0.27 ounces of Columbus 30. So 0.27. And again, that's 2. So we'll keep it at 2. This is a 30-minute addition. Okay. And next we have 1.64 ounces of Cascade, 1.64 ounces of Centennial, and 1.64 ounces of Chinook, all at 0 minutes. So let's do this. Centennial, Cascade, and Chinook. And this is 1.64. That would be 13 grams each. So 13, and then this is all at 0 minutes. So these won't calculate out any IBUs, but because these are all flame out additions, they will still generate some degree of bitterness. So in Beer Maker, we can handle this a couple ways. You can either put these hops at 0 minute into the waste bag and then empty out that waste bag into the grains when you are when you're emptying out the grain bed and pitching yeast, and that just filters those hops out, but you get to keep all of that good hop liquid that's in the waste. Or you could try to add these in as a yeast pitch option, and both of those are going to add a good degree of bitterness to it that just is not captured too well in our IBUs. So if you wanted to increase your IBUs, you certainly can. All we'd have to do is say, let's add a few more grams of Columbus. Say if I want to go to 6 grams of Columbus. We just went from 23 IBUs all the way up to 50. So Columbus is an incredibly high alpha acid hop, and it's used a lot for bittering additions, so that is one way to do it. Otherwise, you could just brew it like this and see how it turns out. So now that we have everything entered in, we're ready to brew this beer. Now we can expect to add right around 6,600 milliliters of water. What I like to do is round up just in case. Nothing bad is going to happen to your beer if you put a little too much water in. You may drip out a little bit, but all in all, your beer is going to be great. The problem if you add too little water is the amount of grain that sits above the water level can potentially not get up to temperature because there's just not enough water that's at that temperature to go through that pasteurization. So it's always better to err on the side of a little too much water. So this is 66. I can just round up to 67, and we are ready to brew.